Right. Are we good?
We're good.
We're good. Good morning. You know what? I didn't hear a goat on this end.
I told you weren't going to hear the goat today.
I did it for everybody at home.
Wow,
Good
that's
morning.
Really good. That was
afternoon.
Your best accent yet.
Evening. Wherever, however, you are joining us. I will trudge through this intro, Jeffrey, like a piano drug uphill both ways in the snow. This is the I Speak Jeep podcast presented by SFJ4x4.com.
Thanks.
My name is Neil.
No, he's very sure today.
I am sure because I will make this happen. My name is Neil with Simpson Family Jeeps here in Grandma's Couch Studio. And I'm joined by a couple decorated individuals and some delicious treats that have filled our bellies over the past week and this morning.
Oh, so good.
And gentlemen, you are?
The maddest mad scientist and stair cobbler extraordinaire, Scott Brown.
Stair cobbler.
That's
true.
fair. That's fair.
Yes.
The producer, Jeff Shermani.
Jeff the Builder.
Yes.
There should be a theme song there.
That wasn't even close to the Bob the Builder
promise
theme
I don't
song.
know what Bob the Builder theme song is. Shut up. I don't know. I promise you I'm not a Subaru owner with my white sunglasses. These are, in fact, super cool Taco Bell sunglasses. If you saw my social from about a month or so ago, you know why. My mom. Sorry, my wife had to have the Taco Bell basket, and so these are the sunglasses. And whatever reason, the bright sun recently has really got to me, and so the studio lights are getting to me right now.
Yeah.
But I'll take it with my bionic eyes. So sweet treats we have. So technically, a big thanks to everybody in our comments, and we will address that in a second. But wholly and irrefutably, Nathan was first this morning by driving 2+ hours
Just to stop in and say he was
stopped
first.
into our facility to say first and brought us the most amazing, delicious donuts. In fact, he said that it's a mom and pop bakery out of, I think he said Beaver Falls.
Yeah.
And it's, what is it? Ormans Donuts.
No Ormans.
Orams.
A tradition since 1938.
There you go. If you're from Pittsburgh, Yins know what it is.
Donuts.
Yins know
Yins
what
know.
it is. Yins know. And you know what he said? It's this mom and pop, but they actually do online ordering. So he had it scheduled for pickup at like 6 a.m. So you hit it on the way here.
That's awesome.
That's some pre-planning. And we thank you so much. He's got a really exciting opportunity ahead of him, and he was coming in to pick our brain in general. He'll be participating in a Trail Hero overlanding experience. He was one of 25 selected applicants, and so he's looking for some outreach, some support, some notoriety for doing this experience in a couple months.
In the comments, real quick, Joe O'Brien said that they're the best donuts around, and I have to point out, Joe, the whole point of him bringing those donuts and being here first was because he wanted to beat you, because he told us that you and him had a bet going of who was going to be first.
Yes, and he well accomplished that. And there's these cinnamon rolls in there that were seriously the size of my head, which obviously, you know, is pretty big. In the figurative sense, and
Right?
not quite the literal, but they were amazing donuts. So we thank him for stopping in. We additionally have with us the the pitiful remains of this heaping pile of peanut butter fudge that we once had.
It was up to here.
It was pie tin with the little cover on it. And that's thanks to Jeannie's Jam and Jeeps and the Cookie Monster. When she came in last week, she brought us some spectacular fudge. So you folks know the way to our hearts is obviously through our stomachs.
So into the comments, everyone that said good morning, we got Giaga Jeepers, Bill McWilliams, Nate, Billy Joe, Joe O'Brien, Ken Kushner, Michael Lentz, and Jeannie.
Good morning to all of you. So outstanding start to our Monday morning. We've got a lot of weekend updates that if you want to hang in there to the very end, the outro, we will be getting to and sharing kind of with you the shenanigans that we find ourselves in our daily lives. Today, we are going to be talking about unibody Jeeps. Oftentimes, not mentioned initially, but long from forgotten, and definitely have a near and dear place in my heart. So we'll be covering some unibody technology. And if you don't know what that is, you're going to want to hang in there for that. Otherwise, I think we hammered through our intros and whatnot. Is that correct?
Yeah.
We've addressed all of our stuff. I think there was a BFR is coming up. Maybe one of the folks in the comments will mention whether or not that's true. I think BFR is coming up next weekend. SOR, Southington Off-Road, will be doing their initial run April, the first weekend of April. So if you're a person who looks forward to them, since they reduced their schedule, we definitely want people to be attending on those actual planned days. And a number of curated trips coming up that I've seen posted online that folks are looking for participants to go to. So whether it's AOA or
BFR was just this past weekend.
BFR was this past weekend. That's right, because Scott Lindquist went to it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Took Chuck Norris and broke him in a little bit. Actually, probably did some trails versus what I did when I was out there.
He literally just said it was yesterday. So Scott, we're curious to hear how your
Well, I saw
time
pictures and it went well. He said, or on the picture. So he said.
Well, I
but
wanted
I
to
think
hear
Rock
from him,
Run.
but that's fine. You can talk.
That's fine, whatever. Rock Run is coming up. That's what I know I definitely saw Rock Run as a special trip. So a lot of people are starting to get the spring itch. So hopefully we can help you scratch it.
Mm-hmm.
Intimately or not.
No.
No comment.
Nope.
All right. Unibody Jeeps.
Yep. Spineless Jeeps.
Oh, frameless and shameless.
Yep.
Absolutely. But I think we want to try and kind of curate this, and we obviously need to start with kind of defining what a unibody vehicle is first and foremost, and then we kind of run the litany of what we've encountered.
Well, I'm going to bore all you guys for 2 seconds
Well,
here.
that won't be anything new.
Wow. Wow.
And
that's usually my line. I wasn't ready for you to call him out.
Well, we spent so much time yesterday together.
That's
That's clearly
fair.
what the problem is.
Well,
So-
Jerry said, great to hear you avoided sugar shock with the pastries. No, we're on sugar rush right
I was
now.
going to say, I'm all fired up. Jerry.
crash is later.
The crash. When we're supposed to be working on Jeeps or shooting other YouTube videos.
Who knows?
Ah.
Anyway,
Scott would really like to talk now. We should stop interrupting him.
I'm used to it at this point.
I'm
So
kind of like cream on my shirt. I think I.
got too excited there.
Oh my god! I got so much cinnamon roll on my.
What are you doing over there?
Look at how much frosting and stuff I got on myself today.
You need a bib. SFJ bibs.
Oh, it's
Who
coming.
wants one?
It'll be bantam at our meat exchange.
Oh, boy.
We're gonna have bibs and aprons.
So I think it's very fitting
You
that
really should.
in the era of AMC
That was a good piece. I just saved it for later.
is when AMC or when Jeep went unibody, and this is why. So way back when there was Nashes and there were Ramblers, Nash and Hudson were one of the first unibody vehicles.
What is unibody?
Unibody is where the body itself has enough structure in the bottom of it that your suspension components attach directly to it.
Until
See-
it rusts away.
Oh, you know what's interesting? I
Hush,
heard you
Jeffrey.
I heard you say the word bottom of it.
Mm-hmm.
And this opens a whole conversation about unibody construction,
Mhm.
is that whether or not it is the entirety of the shell
Mm-hmm.
that provides structure, or whether it is just the bottom of it.
Well, I will tell you the mad scientist take on this, because who needs facts when you got mad scientist facts? The early unibodies, the bottom of the vehicle,
Do you know what song
or
that
the
is?
floor. I'm done. Just turn off this mic, Jeff.
Fat bottom girls, you make the rockin' world go round.
Why is that song stuck in your head?
He was talking about the bottom construction.
I get
No.
that, but
It's got
Anyway.
enough junk in the trunk to support the vehicle.
Anywho's, so they had, because they knew frames, they kind of
Yes.
went looking at the unibody thing like, oh, we'll just make a sheet metal frame and
Yes.
then weld that to the floor. And if you've ever seen an XJ, that's pretty much what they
Looks
did.
kind of like a frame. You can't add a body lift to an XJ.
No. So later on, they did, as the cars progressed, they made it more what we're standard used to now, where we have front and rear frame rails, air quotes, with a floor in between, because the more you can lower the seats in a car,
Right.
the lower the roof needs to be, the more streamlined it is, that kind of stuff. That's why that happened. Obviously, in Jeeps, we don't care about no, high center of gravity and tallness.
No.
So,
Sort of.
But they were one of the first, and literally early Ramblers and early Nashes. It was full unitized construction. That was one of their selling points.
Right. It was supposed to be lighter,
It's lighter, it's stronger.
easier to manufacture, theoretically. Air quotes. Right, because you don't have the process of marrying them together. You're actually just doing this. And the engineered principles behind it have only gotten better over the years as far as impact ratings and crumple zones and structural
it'll also go to to what Jeff was already talking about. That's also where like galvanic making the body panels galvanized, dipping them, that kind of stuff. That's where all that started, was I tried to rust proof them. Obviously that all failed
because there was sealed parts, like there was pockets you kind of couldn't get into.
Yes. So that's why all the early AMCs were all known as rotted out cars, and obviously XJs are no
No, they're not. The apple does not fall far from the tree.
No. So, but it's kind of hey, we've been doing this for 50 years. Why can't we do it on a Jeep? And that's literally what they did. And it's kind of a combination of all those ideas in one vehicle, because you got your inline six, which was, again, something those cars were known for. You got your unitized construction, and then they were going into the future, which they always tried to do, with their front end designs and that kind of stuff. So it kind of was just carrying on the torch,
right?
Doing
it was
the
the
same
natural
thing.
progression
Yes.
from, honestly, that, like you said, stuff that
from the
Nash
literally
and
the
Hudson,
late 40s.
yeah, Nash, Hudson, eventually the AMC line.
Yes.
Trying to think of somebody else. Studebaker was frame.
Studebakers were framed. They did go into unibody later on. But that is something else. Maybe some people don't know what AMC started as. Was literally the gathering or
Correct.
connection of Hudson and Nash going together and kind of pooling their resources.
Right. I was going to say, I almost wonder, it would be a great talking point. Maybe people do or don't want to hear this, but basically the family tree of Stellantis, right? And kind of following the ancestry.com. If they spit on the stick, what comes out? What if Stellantis spits on the stick?
Wow.
What
Right
comes
there.
out in ancestry.com?
Yeah.
That would be kind of a fun
I could
one.
totally tell you guys if I didn't put you to sleep already.
So,
But anyway, so
I have a
heirs of this to
question.
Unibody.
I have a question.
Yes.
Since we're talking about the unibodies, and the unibodies are in so many vehicles today, such a prevalent thing, why are Jeeps not unibodies?
Why are Jeeps and many trucks,
And many
most
trucks.
trucks, still frame on construction?
Because you get a different feel from a frame on truck than you do with a unibody. And this is probably, again, this is, Scott, mad scientist facts. So who needs real facts? I feel like a unibody, it's too solid. A truck on frame, you get a different ride, you get a different experience, a different handling, and it's more what you expect out of a truck. When you go over to the unitized construction, it is very solid, and sometimes that's bad. For those that don't know, back in with the Willys, the frames just were flexible as all get out, and it was not uncommon for the frame to flex more than your suspension did to go through an obstacle. Well, now you have a unitized construction, which is solid and won't flex, which in some ways is good until you go through that hole. And now the suspension has to do 98% of the work. You're always going to have some flex. You're always going to have some deflection, but the suspension has to do almost all of it. And the body isn't doing any of it. And I think that's just, I think subconsciously, when you get in a truck you expect it, the way it handles and the way it works, to feel like a frame-on chassis.
So I as a proprietor of all these things, trucks and Jeeps, and not that I dislike unibody construction, I actually quite like it, but I think that there is, what jumped out to me was like, you can't handle the truth, right? The Western culture, to speak to what Scott is sharing, we have an expectation about solid axle, kind of the predictability of solid axles and on frame construction, and how it operates, right? It's a predictable thing that we've been doing for so long, so we'll just kind of keep doing it. There is definitely something to be said about engineering challenges when it comes to these incredibly, oftentimes we have heavier motors. Now, it's not to say that our Jeep motors are heavy, but when it comes to our trucks with our diesel applications, whatever model it is simply a heavier product. Also, the load carrying capacity of a truck bed, the payload capacity of a truck bed, and towing. And it's not to be, I don't think that it's not that you can't achieve this in unibody construction. It's that we haven't satisfactorily tried. Now, I honestly don't follow the Tesla trucks quite enough, but I'm actually kind of under the impression that the Tesla truck is some form of unibody.
I was under that understanding as well. And Jerry's in the comments saying the NVH isolation is inherently more difficult in the unibody architecture.
Yep, because you're attached to your suspension.
Because you're attached to it, right? And so the NVH, for those listening at home, is noise vibration harshness. Yep. And Jerry, as a local expert, if you will, working within the mothership platform for many years, is definitely as good of expert to weigh in on that as any. And as Scott's, and that's paying credit to what Scott's saying, is that the shell is the rigor of that assembly, and then you're attached directly to your suspension. Our own experience is it's very hard for us to make the creaks and groans go away in your Patriot, Compass,
Renegade,
and Renegades,
Cherokees,
especially that have and Cherokees that have 100,000+ miles on them.
Yep.
That's not to say that that's not still a viable vehicle, but that NVH, that noise vibration harshness, we can throw new bolts, new control arms. We can virtually go in and replace the suspension in its entirety, and we still get little pops and creaks and little stuff every once in a blue moon.
It's something that I've been exposed to as I've gone down the sheet metal rabbit hole, is as you're trying to take something that's been spot welded together apart to repair it, you will be surprised how many welds are not welded anymore. Now, we'll have, thousands of spot welds. So if 2 welds fail, kind of doesn't matter in the scheme of the world. But where does your rattle, where is your creak, where does your squeak come from? Well, now that those welds are failed, those 2 panels can do this. And obviously
they might make their own noise, but they also might just allow enough energy transference
correct.
to a bushing,
and it's
to
really
a control
hard
arm.
to actually correlate that until you get into the meat and potatoes of the vehicle and you're actually trying to take it apart. And then remember, they were not intended to come apart. They go together once and that was it.
So that's what the other part of why we're still using frame-on technology is the rugged nature of the Wrangler and many truck platforms. Is we want to be able, again, as a culture, we want to be able to replace parts. We want to be able to damage a truck bed and be able to replace it. And if you were in a unibody construction like a Honda Ridgeline, you cannot replace the bed easily. You're into sheet metal work specifically.
So something that, and it actually was not Jeep that had this issue, and I'm curious to see if you even know about this or not.
Okay.
But a certain very popular manufacturer of trucks for a very brief time had what was called a unibody truck, where the bed and the cab were one piece. And why they did not keep it that way is because they were ripping or tearing at the cab. Very commonly, there was very common for stress cracks and that kind of stuff, because how the bed is used and how the cab is used is different. And I think that's why we saw the Comanche specifically, even though it's unibody and your frame is unitized to the front of the cab, the bed was a separate unit.
Yeah, and that's a great one that you and I kind of went rounds on when we were, first starting out. And I think you kind of proved, certainly to me, the independent nature, because when we were younger doing this, we thought that the bed was integrated, that it was part of the structure, which was the whole, is the structure in the top or is it in the fat bottom, right? Yep. And it's, within the Comanche, when it's separate, it's a unitized front and almost a frame rear.
Yep.
So the Volkswagen had a pick 'em up truck that was all one piece.
That was car based.
And and then
those
Dodge had a truck that I thought in the mid 80s.
That was a Rampage. That doesn't count because it's still a car.
You're not trying to talk about the Honda one, are you?
Nope.
No, we already talked about that.
Now, this was in the 60s.
Oh, 60s.
60s.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
And we have a unibody truck in the 60s.
I don't know if it was on a frame or not, but it was called a unibody because the box and the cab were one piece. And they made short beds and long beds of these as well. And they have a cult following now. We actually have an acquaintance of ours that had dose of them. One was really pretty. One was a project.
Okay. What are they?
Ford F-100 unibody. It was, I believe, 61, 62, and 63 only.
You know what?
And they have a special taillight, special bed. The cab is very similar to the
Can't believe
standard.
he's bringing up Ford on a Jeep podcast.
Well, it's talking about unibody. It all.
This is coming from the guy who last week, when there was a Ford Bronco in the parking lot, goes, "Why is that thing in our parking lot?"
Well,
Which he owns the most Fords out of anybody. Right? I mean, just out of any of us here, he owns currently the most and in longevity the most. Okay. Cool story, bro. All right. So
everybody makes something cool.
Wow. Wow.
Okay. All right. You know what? I can appreciate that. All right. So we have this unibody construction and the conversation of frameless and shameless. Go ahead.
I do have one more question, because now we've talked about all the reasons you don't want a unibody.
Mm-hmm.
What are the pros of it besides being lighter weight?
So it's stronger. So in a crash scenario, that's a good thing.
Is it stronger, or is it able to have more crumple zones so that
I think it is predictable or engineered.
Yes.
Crash safety test spaces.
Correct. I don't think that it's stronger. It's better engineering.
It's this weird area where you have to talk about a frame type vehicle or body on frame. They have to weaken the frame somehow to have crash points.
Right.
Which is a weird concept.
It is.
To actually plan where it's going to kink, where it's going to crumple. Where as a unitized construction, you have other panels supporting panels. Basically is like, oh, you need that to be stronger. Well, we can put a rib in here, or we can add a gusset here and spot it all together. And now it's a very strong structure.
Right. I think it's a conversation of like an exoskeleton or an exo cage. We understand how a sphere works as far as the structure. If we were to put triangles together. And so we're really working with some kind of rudimentary principles. Whereas when we do a frame on construction, rudimentary geometry and physics principles to create really strong exoskeleton.
That's why you don't see body on frame bridges. You see a bridge as a whole unit put together, and that's what carries the load.
Which is then the conversation about Jeeps is when we have the axles attached to a suspension, attached to a frame. This becomes the piers or the pylons of a bridge.
Yes.
And you have these almost how I see it, obviously, is independent layers, right? There's independent pieces that can kind of come and go out of that, which then in a crash safety test rating, oftentimes mandated by the federal government and implemented by our quality manufacturers, it is harder to predict how that's going to impact the occupants at any given time.
And flip side, because I know there's somebody going out there. No, a frame, body on frame is better. Yes, in the crash scenario, you take a Jeep Wrangler and you take a Cherokee and you smash both against something. The Wrangler's likelihood of being able to drive home from that is higher.
Yes.
But did you get hurt in the Wrangler? Did you get where did the energy have to come up with? With the Cherokee, it's all going to be absorbed in the chassis.
Yeah, it's going to accordion the vehicle, but
and now the Cherokee is totaled.
But you were safe because you didn't absorb any of that energy.
Correct. And it's a weird conciseness.
In the comments real quick, we've got Nick Linda Perry saying good morning and Jill Harper saying good morning from AOP.
Good morning to all of you, and your kind of exotic good mornings as well makes us obviously clearly jealous, Joe. So, and that's I heard you say, reiterate your sentiment that both of you, that unibody is going to accordion together in a manner which safely accordions together, making sure that the occupants are safe, whereas those layers of the Jeep, the cake, the bridge, whatever, as it collapses, if it transfers energy, can have negative consequences on the occupants of the vehicle.
Yep.
Now, I hear it all the time as far as when I'm out and about my things, in life, or certainly people who are wanting to consult or bend my ear. I want to get this frame on vehicle, insert truck or Jeep or whatever, because it's safer for my teenager. Mm-hmm. And I think that this idea that we are oftentimes as a society bell curve in more minor fender benders.
Yeah.
And that is the reason why we have this notion, this conception that it's safer, because we get into a fender bender, you hit a pylon in the parking lot, you curb something in the bank teller's line, or in an accident, you hit somebody, rear end them or front end them. The Jeep is going to Wrangler.
It's going to shrug it off.
It's going to shrug it off.
Yes.
Yeah.
You have steel bumpers that are part of our aftermarket life. In some OE applications, you're going to be able to hit that versus the plastic fascia, which rounds out and protects most other vehicles.
Yeah.
And that idea that, I know my cousin twice removed was in an accident and, the vehicle crumpled up, like a wadded up piece of tinfoil. They were fine though. But they were out of vehicle.
We always look at where the financial hits our pocket.
100%.
And I've been there. It's fun to be in a fender bender and your Jeep's like laughing off.
Okay, it's not fun to be in the fender bender.
I was going to say, this is
what Scott is talking about is a specific story where we were in Chuck Norris together.
Yeah.
Before Chuck was Chuck.
Yes.
He was in a transitional state.
Yes.
And
I was towing a trailer.
And we rear-ended somebody else.
Yes, because
they had no taillights.
Yes, that's they stopped way too fast,
and they have no taillights because
it slid all four tires. I did my best.
Yeah, it's small town USA.
But we were down a fog light, and they got towed away on a tow truck to go get probably totaled.
Correct. And much like anything else in my life, we were like, we're just gonna drive away.
We're just gonna drive away, and we're gonna keep going to our destination.
To our destination, and dug a really cool old Willie's body out of the pasture.
And in that situation, we weren't hurt. There was not enough inertia.
Correct.
To hurt us.
The airbags didn't go off.
The airbags didn't go off.
The other vehicle was a mess.
Crumpled.
The trunk and the rear plastic bumper and whatnot was crumpled. So.
Yeah, it was bad. So in that situation, it was easy to go, rah, 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 this is great. Look at this tough Jeep. And yeah, it is tough.
Mm-hmm.
But in that situation, the energy has to get taken up somewhere.
I was going to say, imagine if you would have hit a tree or something large that doesn't absorb energy.
Right. Yeah. And what we see now out of our frame on vehicles, especially our newer ones, and we've seen this quite a bit professionally, is we're seeing the frames ladder. Mm-hmm. Kind of, in my opinion, more than ever.
Well, I'm going to go out again. Lots of Scott facts today.
Okay.
Well, before we get into the next Scott fact, I want to jump at the comments. Scott L said, Chuck did amazing. We met a father-son who recently built a beautiful 1980 CJ and rode with them for a couple hours. Note, for future BFR trip, is to download on X Maps. Paper maps are no fun. Don't fold the maps, Scott.
Don't fold the map?
Paper maps, don't fold the maps. Haven't you ever watched Twister? Jeez.
That was a really good reference, Jeff. We all are.
Yeah, we're
laughing.
right there.
Woo!
Anyways,
Yeah.
and then Houseman said, sorry, that is of a Chevy Impala. I'm not sure what he was referencing.
So I think he's probably referencing this crash footage of a 59 Impala and like a 2000s Impala. I'm not sure what exactly because I don't know my newer Impala as well. And they crash test both of them in our typical safety crash. And everybody before the footage is like, oh, the 59 is going to decimate it.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be bad, awesome. And the dummy in the 59 Impala, I don't think made it.
I think they eat the engine
Oh,
or
it's
the
it's
cowl
all bad.
or something.
It's all bad. And and for those that don't know, yes, the 59 Impala is frame on
right.
construction.
Oh, and beautiful solid metal.
Yeah.
Sheet
It's
metal
everything,
everywhere.
big chrome bumpers, all that. It's not pretty for the crash dummy. The other Impala, the guy, goes and gets coffee afterwards. It's fine.
Basically, right. Crash dummy goes out for a date. I think, and don't quote me on this by any stretch, because again, I went through my Impala phase.
Yeah.
I
think it was like
think it was the police cruiser series.
No, I think it was before that, but it was like a 12 or 13. It was newer than yours.
You thought it was newer than mine.
It was newer than yours.
Maybe Houseman will tell us as far as what that was
Yeah.
in the process, because I thought it was older than mine.
I
It was
thought about bringing that up, but I figured since I was always chastised about bringing up a Ford in the program, if I continued on with a Chevy.
Well, because now we're speaking my language. My Impala
I
phase.
got excited now.
My Impala phase was a thing.
Yeah.
Could have told you all about the LTZ at one point. But
Oh boy.
it was such a cool concept. Anyways, we
Not
have
a
not
cool
actually
card, just a
talked.
cool
It was a
concept.
cool concept. We have not actually mentioned by when I say modern standards, the last 20, 25-ish years, we've not actually mentioned by name unibody Jeeps.
Yeah.
So, as a whole, Jeffrey owned one. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
I wanted to finish my Scott fact, not fact.
Oh,
2 or 3.
So starting with a TJ, the frame actually needs the body to kind of be its backup. I realized this early on when I was actually with Chuck Norris. I wanted to save it as much as possible because obviously I knew that Neil needed as much Jeep as possible to put 60s under.
So that it could park in the lot.
Anyway.
Wow. That was
Jeff
just
is
cut me
just
down.
mean.
59 versus 09 is what Houseman said.
Oh, it was mine.
No,
It was an 08.
I think yours was the last of that body style. Anyway, nobody cares about
Wow.
Impalas but Neil.
Who cares about it?
So
Everybody wants to know about the multi-generation of the Impala. I think that's a fair
Now.
sentiment.
Nope. Anyway, when I took the body bolts out, I was amazed how much sag the frame had once the body and it were not married together with the
Right.
bolts. I was taking those bolts out to put never sees on them, so as I knew, obviously knew Neil was going to frame off it at some point. But I have noticed that
It was the
since.
same.
And just like we just out with our Cookie Monster, the frame wasn't laddered until we unbolted it off the body.
Right.
And then we heard noises
Yep.
and the frame went beep,
Right.
because so they're not unibody, but they've taken some of that technology and some of that designing and put it into the frame, body on frame vehicles where they kind of need the backup. And this is actually what Neil was arguing with me years ago about the Comanche. He thought that the bed was strengthening the back frame rails of the Comanche. And if you were to put a flatbed on it, it would just break in half.
Break in half.
And then I proved to him otherwise because I had a really rusty Comanche with a flatbed and I made him end up with it somehow.
It's true.
And then he used it and abused it. And I had welded it back together from it breaking in half.
Yes.
And it's continued to not break in half.
100%.
So he had to go, well, I think Scott's right in that situation.
I did defer finally to your sentiment.
Took
there.
years.
Yeah, and the other piece is, and I know that we should be talking about the lifestyles of the frameless and shameless, but I'm going to make kind of that continued point with the boop noise you did
Yeah.
with the laddering and the tub. There was as this engineered structure was kind of coming into conversation in the late 80s, the 90s, when we were talking about how they were building frames. In the big truck, okay, not big and as in heavy truck as far as like class 8s and semis, but because I was going around to like the truck nationals and stuff, I was into the triple roll bars and KC light scene. A thing was to double frame your truck,
Yeah.
right? And then because
Definitely not cool.
definitely because you double frame your truck, and so that you could actually get lift height. So a thing that folks were doing at that time was obviously the suspension hangs off your frame. So then if I add another 4 to 6 inches of frame and then a body lift, I can achieve all of this awesome lift out of that scene at that time. Well, anyways, it then transferred over into the Jeep market as well.
Yes.
And the problem was when folks were double framing, that, and by extension, there was Jeep folks who were not double framing, but they were drawing their roll bar and welding to the frame. Do you remember they were going through the body and welding to the frame, and then they were trying to attach things
To the cage.
to the cage.
If you do that, make the seats attached to the cage, please.
Seats should attach, but the body should not, because everything starts to move around in there. And so what was happening constantly was welds were breaking, cages were breaking, frames were breaking, because that rigor existed where it shouldn't. We should have some natural flexion in the vehicle.
As Dana has proven to us with their testing, you need flex somewhere, and when you make something stronger, you've moved the flex.
Right.
And what they call it is now you've moved your fuse. And what their wisdom is, do you want your ring and pinion to be the fuse, or do you want your axle shaft to be the fuse?
Right.
Because
What's
something
easier to
has to be a
replace?
fuse.
Right.
What's cheaper to replace and what's easier to replace? And I was like, kudos.
So I'm going to use that analogy. I'm going to move a little bit into what Jerry had said, in the sense that NVH is harder to narrow down on on a unibody construction, because you've moved the fuse directly into the bushings and bearings that are immediately attached to your running gear.
Yep.
Right now, the challenge is in the bird's eye view, the umbrella look at this is the fact that in a catastrophic accident, do you want the 59 Impala to be the fuse, or do you want the occupant? Do you want the person? Right. And that's ultimately where our engineers and governmental regulations in conjunction with manufacturing standards have come in to say, we want the vehicle.
We don't care about the car. Save the person.
Correct. We don't care about the car.
We're just weird and we like our cars a lot.
Right. Right. And that's ultimately our thing, is like, hey, the car would be really cool, but that person should not be the fuse.
Yeah.
And so I think that's an interesting conversation to say, why did we, or do we continue to go along with this? I also still think that if we follow the money, if we pinch the pennies, I think there's something to be said about robots welding sheet panel together.
Well, it's thinner. You don't have to use as thick of a steel like a frame would be. So that cost makes it cheaper. I think that's really why Nash and Hudson originally wanted to do it, was because it was cheaper. They were independent car makers. They had to cut pennies wherever they could. It makes a lot of sense to me. Again, being from the sheet metal world now, I kind of understand the matrix a little bit more.
And I think that every manufacturer kind of messed with this technology over the years. And this then brings me to kind of an interesting point about, and I said in the kind of the startup of the program, how much I actually love unibody Jeeps. And I say that because it diversifies the brand. It allows us.
We used to have a saying, and I'm just taking Neil's thunder at this point, but that's fine.
That's fine. Whatever.
Is you sell a Renegade, you sell a Cherokee, you sell a Grand Cherokee, sell a Wagoneer, whatever, to allow the Wrangler to exist, so that our enthusiast Jeeps can be more costly to produce, to
Cost
maybe
effective to produce. Yes.
maybe not make the most sense on the whole bell curve, because we're kind of a specialty market
Right.
where a young kid can go, oh cool, I like that, but I can't do that quite yet financially because it costs so much, so I'll start out in the Renegade. I've heard that over and over again, where I really like the Jeep life, I want to dip my toes in, but I can't quite swing a Wrangler, or I can't quite get a Gladiator.
So that's where you buy not a real Jeep like I did.
He said it, not me.
I'm going to say, because I own several of them.
He did.
I mean, I had a Liberty, I had a Grand Cherokee, I had a Cherokee.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, I mean, we've owned similar, and I like all of those platforms, or attributes of those platforms, but ultimately they exist to be a cost-effective, diversified alternative specifically to the Wrangler and now Gladiator platforms, right?
And because the Wrangler and Gladiator are body on frame designs, it's easier to modify them. It's easier to make them more off-road capable. Anytime someone comes in with a unitized construction vehicle, we immediately have some things to overcome the overtake, wheel well size. How are we attaching the suspension to it? Say if we're trying to long arm something, well, we only have so many attachment points to the uniframe to do this. So you kind of have limited choices, where with a Wrangler, you can pretty much do whatever you want within reason.
Right. Right.
And again, I think they're again trying to play the game a little bit, because we've seen since the JK forward, they did it on Rams as well. They've made the front inner structure where the fenders and the grill and the core support used to be is now kind of part of the body.
Yes.
And that's kind of taking some notes from the unitized construction,
Yes.
which makes it harder to repair.
Mm-hmm.
If you get in an accident with your JK and newer and you damage that inner structure, well, now you have to go in and dissect it like you would a unitized vehicle, replace that section, and then put the fender back on. Where a TJ, you can kind of cow the fender all up like it was on Chuck Norris when I bought it.
Mm-hmm.
Put a new fender on in 3 hours, because that's what it took me to make Chuck Norris drivable, and go about your life.
Right.
But that's because that is your whole thing up
Right.
front.
But of course, it has no structural. It's really more of an almost an aesthetic piece. Its
Yes.
structure is it's holding up the grill and the hood
lights.
and the lights.
Yeah.
It's not actually benefiting the overall impact or security of the vehicle itself.
Right.
Yep.
So again, we're going to kind of go back to the 80s, and in the 80s we've got the in the actual Jeep branded models, we have the Cherokee and the Comanche, and those as AMC is in solid ownership, kind of as we mentioned previously, marries some technologies we saw in the AMC Eagle.
Yep.
Some of the popularity and technologies we saw marries that into kind of a wholly independent Jeep branded vehicle.
And just because we haven't said it in like 3 podcasts, also had some Renault stuff
No, I
with the French fuel injection.
French and Italian love child. Oui, oui.
And the terrible transmission.
Nah. Is that what you wanted, Jeff? I am just. I
don't know what I wanted, but I'm loving the fact that you're doing your accents again.
I haven't had anybody in Minnesota or Canada to offend recently. So,
That's fair.
So I'll come after Renault.
Yeah, as you should.
Right. They deserve every bit of it, honestly.
Ken just said, if you want to practice more on a unibody, I'll buy the parts, you provide the labor.
All right. So we have our Comanches and our Cherokees. At that time, our full size Jeeps are
Body on frame.
body on frame, and so then you have your CJ platforms and the end of the era pick 'em up trucks are all frame on as well.
Correct.
So that platform then leads us into 93, where we see the Grand Cherokee. You're looking at a horror movie, folks. I was gonna say, that brief moment, that pause was brought to you by the fact that
The studio is haunted.
I'm going to admit this on air and allow to you guys, because I am almost certain that probably my child is here trying to check out my office, and that is the studio creaking as they're climbing up to the office.
I wondered if it was that or if Davey.
Well,
Davey
it's
went up there
Davey.
for
Somebody's going up to
Which
the
is
to my
why
office.
Scott's a stair fabricable.
You're doing a stair cobbling because that was like out of a horror movie where the room started to creak and groan at us.
I was like, are we in a tornado?
I was like, what is going on? I was on red alert. There's no fight or flight. I'm just fighting my way out.
Anyway.
Okay. So
So we had our
93
Cherokee
we had
back and watch.
Grand Cherokee.
We had our 93 had our Grand Cherokee, which,
Still producing the Comanche, no longer
Nope.
producing the Cherokee, no longer producing the
yeah,
Comanche.
that died the year before.
Yeah.
92.
Yep. It was a good year.
Good year. So anyway, they took one from the Cherokee, what they learned.
Mm-hmm.
They were selling like hotcakes. Couldn't
Yes.
make enough of them. So they made the Grand unitized as well.
Correct.
And I would argue to say that unitization was stronger than the Cherokee was. They took what they had learned
Mm-hmm.
from the Cherokee and kind of Chrysler-fied it and made it even better.
Sure.
So
Well, because we're almost a decade into production, or we are roughly a decade into production of the Cherokee.
and this is another
Learned a couple of things in 10 years.
another example. Something that I always bring up about the ZJ is the latch of the doors. The front doors like to fail, like literally around the structure of the door will crack out. That's because you have this really strong unitized body,
Right.
and now you have these doors that open and it can move around. The body ain't moving.
Right.
The door shell is what's going to move, and that's what's going to fail.
And we do have, with that era, when you would get that Jeep all twisted up and flexed out, there was some flexion in that Jeep because the common thing was getting it all twisted up like a slinky and then trying to pop your rear hatch.
Yes.
And your rear hatch either would not unlatch,
Yep.
or you would be unlatched and maybe you were sitting there at lunch, you
Yeah.
were taking your 10-minute break and it opened up and it's all twisted up at that point.
And then it don't go as it close.
And then you go to close it and clunk, clunk,
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I remember.
I remember people like, I got to see how strong my Cherokee still is. So they flex it out and go around and open and close doors. And I may or may not have done this in my
You were
past.
100% that guy. You were that guy.
And I was like, oh, it's really strong and not rusted out. The rockers are good because I
Yes.
can open and close things.
Yes. Yes. Oh gosh, that's so funny. And of course, when we did plating of the unibody
Yep.
frame construction,
Yep.
there was a number of reputable manufacturers making plating for that to try and reinforce that. There was always a conversation about going around opening and closing. But anyway, so we see that initial 3 model offering. We then eventually have the Liberty, Gens 1 and Gen 2. Yep, Gen 1 and Gen 2 of the Liberty are both unibody construction. We eventually see the Patriot, Compass.
You skipped one.
Go ahead.
The Commander.
To have a moment of silence for everything the Commander could have been.
Oh, right?
The
It came
Commander.
out. It was like, this is gonna be awesome, and then you look at it, you're like, this is no.
If you ever watch any of my stuff or follow any of if you think that I am jaded or cynical about anything that Jeep teases into the world,
Where they touched us.
where I was touched the most, I think was the
On
Commander.
paper, the Commander was awesome.
Yes.
This was when I was a salesman for
And
for
then,
Jeep, and
then I got the C one, and I remember that day.
oh,
It was a rental,
we
and I came out of the office, and I was like, there's a Commander. I'm going to go look at it. And people were trying to sit in the third row.
there's no third row,
And-
I don't care what you
and
It's
say.
the third row.
And
It's
you had
seat
to-
7.
You fold
Yeah.
yourself up into a suitcase,
Uh-huh.
and then you sort of fit in the third row.
Maybe.
5.7 Hemi with a 44 rear
Yeah.
was going to have the tow capacity of a
Yes.
semi truck.
Yep.
And
For Neil. I was looking for half-ton stuff. Jeff hadn't realized he needed the 3/4-ton truck yet at that point.
But a Commander teased to me I was going to be able to do anything and everything I ever wanted to tow. If I wanted to move mobile homes for a professional living,
Yeah.
Heck
I
yeah.
could do it with
Well, and we
a
sort of
Commander.
did it with our Cherokees.
Oh, 100%.
And if you squinted, the Commander kind of looked like a Cherokee.
Yes.
So it was just a little bit bigger, so we
Yeah.
could stuff
Did
big
you
tires on
hear
it.
me mention you could get a 5.7 Hemi in it? I mean,
Yeah.
Right.
it was a V8 Jeep.
Yeah.
Better, air quotes, than
Than
the
the Grand Cherokee
than the
V8?
Grand Cherokee V8.
And then we learned that our 11-year-olds could not fit in the third row that we currently have.
Oh, I
And
wanted the
honestly, our
Commander to
daughters
be-
can't either because
No.
they're all too tall.
I was going
wanted-
to say, none of our kids could have fit in that
Nobody
third row.
fits in that third row. I wanted the Commander to be something that it just couldn't
When
be.
we got it into the dealership, I just remember we put it right into the showroom floor, and myself and another guy, we were like immediately like, let's go check it out. And we both tried to climb in from the opposite doors into that back seat, and we just started laughing. We're like, nope, not happening.
Yeah.
All right, so we have the Commander, which was again touted as something that we wanted it to be, and it was unibody construction. We then see the Compass, the Patriot, which is actually, I'm going to make a bold statement, the same vehicle,
Yes.
but different clothing.
yes.
Yes.
And then
yet again, they tried to make it Cherokee-esque with the Patriot, and I liked those too for about 2 seconds until I got to interact with one.
Yep.
I still really
Yep.
like a Patriot. I still really like a Patriot. But you have to
Just
understand
like
that
the threadbare nature, the stick shift, bare bone crate windows that you can get a Patriot.
I really do.
Yeah, you do.
I love, and in fact,
That's
I
why I
love
got
that.
my Gladiator. That was just saying you could do that.
We had a customer who had a 2-wheel drive.
He can't because nobody else in his family would
I
allow
know.
that.
I know. We had this conversation this weekend. That's my
I want again. If I can just have an engine and a seat, I will be perfect. And 4 wheels at this point in my life, I will be perfectly okay. And I just want to rip, right? And that little Patriot, and I like it to be cheap, or I like, you know,
That was the benefit of the Patriot and the Compass when they first came out, was the price tag on them.
Yes.
Was so you could buy it for $19,000 brand new off the lot.
yes, that was a different era, man.
Right?
That was a different era. You could buy a total stripper package. You could have a new vehicle made by Jeep. Honestly, the 2-wheel drive had nice balance to it. It did not get stuck.
I
in the
would
snow.
argue you could have got the top of the line for $25,000.
Well, and I was going to say, if you just got the 4-wheel drive, all-wheel drive system, that Jeep does.
Yeah, didn't they have like $14,999 or something?
Something like
$14,999 for the entry level.
Sometime. Yeah,
Yeah.
you absolutely did.
It was
But
stupid cheap.
You could get that, and you can do the bell curve of what the average daily driver vehicle needs to do. Now, don't expect to own it like your grandpa owned a vehicle for 60 years.
Yeah.
That's not what that vehicle was ever built for.
Don Jacobs said the Commander was as disappointing as the last FJ Cruiser was.
That's
fair.
also fair. We have already talked poorly about Fords. We have talked poorly about GMs. Why don't we just throw Toyota in there and kick them all? Everybody's
I
down.
mean, it's kind of like a new Bronco. Just saying.
Stop. The FJ Cruiser with its bubble windows and absolute everything blind spot.
Yeah.
Unless you're just going dead straight forward like a racehorse, you're SOL. So it's 100%.
If you can't see it, doesn't exist.
The vehicle's big enough. So as far as that era, the Compass and the Patriot, and I don't hate that. I don't hate them, but understand that they have limitations. The Rennie comes out through the marriage of our international markets, which is just the Fiat Panda.
Yep.
It's a Panda.
Yep.
I
It's
was
a
actually
Panda.
back when the Renegade hit the market, which obviously was supposed to be an homage to the Renegade trim packages and
There's so many Easter eggs.
so much, right? Kind of Jeep honor wrapped up in that namesake.
But
That
why
they
the
decided,
X's on the taillights?
Because of the jerry cans from World War II.
I didn't know that one.
So the thing that I think was really interesting was that Fiat, in their marriage of this conglomeration,
Of them
said,
getting involved with this big melting pot of automotive.
yes, automotive, said, hey, we already have this thing. It's doing pretty well in international markets. It's technically boxy, and Jeep people love boxy.
I'm going to take it one step further because I was a big proponent for the British Top Gear before they ruined it.
Right. Fair.
James May loved him a Fiat Panda.
Yes.
They made them in 4-wheel drive.
Yep.
And there were people that literally overlanding
100%.
in them.
Long
And
before
so-
overlanding was cool here.
Yes.
They were
over-
taking holiday
yes
in their pandas.
with their caravans.
Yes.
Yeah, but their
caravan.
holiday was an hour drive. Ours is like 12 hours, and you might be
That's
quarter of
fair.
the way to your destination.
Well,
That's fair. So I can see
Jeff, stop bringing us back down to earth.
I can see where somebody from across the pond would show up and be like, you want to do this and you want to do that, and I have not yet traveled out of the state,
Right.
but I've realized how big America is.
Right.
A panda makes perfect
Panda.
sense. We just need to make it a Jeep so that people will buy it.
And I
Right.
think that that's exactly what they did. Was they said we have this platform and it's about as far away from being a Jeep as possible. So let's
Rename it a Jeep.
rename it a Jeep and give it all these cool attributes.
Yes.
Therefore, Jeep people will love it, and I was here for it. You got me. I sipped that Kool-Aid. And
Well,
It's-
and now I'd say that we have like our own little cult following of renegades.
yes,
There is clubs and stuff where it's just renegades.
yes.
And they're off-roading them and stuff. And now are they doing Moab? Maybe.
A
drive it
handful.
home?
A handful.
I don't know.
It's the same as with the Liberties. You know, should you be doing that? No. Can you do it? Yes.
Yeah.
The KL Cherokee has has a full following.
Yeah.
Liberties, both Gen 1 and Gen 2 have a full following, and there's a couple brands that are dedicated wholly to unibody by today's standards.
Well, people like to be different, which I can identify with,
Yes.
and go and burn their own trail, kind of go in their own direction. It's definitely harder because you're pulling that piano uphill both ways
Oh,
through
Right.
8 feet of snow.
and doing stuff like that with like the Renegade, there's not a huge aftermarket support for it. So
There's probably like 2 or 3 good companies that you can utilize. And because they're smaller, their R&D is less, that kind of stuff. So you are
Yep.
more the R&D in those situations where you get into a more standard platform like a Wrangler. There's so much R&D. There's so much idea sharing and that kind of stuff.
well, we're out of time. But was there any coming down the pipeline from Jeep that we know of unibodies that we should be looking for coming
Right.
up?
I think
Well-
there's that one that you're really excited about, isn't it?
Right. So I am under the impression, and don't
Till
quote
they
me.
crush him again.
Right. And so this is
They-
exactly
They've
where
only
I
moved
feel.
it out a couple years.
Yeah, that the Jeep Recon is intended to be unibody construction. Now, somebody online, and this is the thing, is that I'm excited from a bird's eye view and not from a deep, intimate, deep dive into the Recon. But so somebody might correct me, but I'm under the impression that the Recon is touted as a unibody because it is supposed to be smaller and lighter than our Wrangler brethren.
Correct.
And they would achieve this by having it be a unibody. Now, the challenge, the last one of the final challenges that I would, party messages, is that unibody Jeeps have always been the one of the primary constraints is to give it that exterior rigidity or structure is the wheel well openings themselves.
Yes.
And so they have narrower wheel well openings than your frame on counterparts.
Yep.
And so the Recon, what throws us through a little bit of a loop is the fact that you are supposed to be able to get a bigger tire with wheel travel.
Yep.
And
And the doors come off, right?
the doors come
Yep.
off. And
it's making a Wrangler a unibody as a test outfit.
and
basically.
if that is the case, then I think that is a stepping stone to see if the market will come to unibody vehicles.
Well, and here's your mad scientist homework. Everything that's old is new again.
Mm-hmm.
Where did this idea come from? And you let us know.
Bum bum bum.
Because it totally did this exact thing. It was a concept and never came to be real. So everybody has to do some homework, find that.
Yep, we'll be back next week.
We'll be back next week, and I want to see who
See
gets
who
it
knows
right.
where that
Yeah.
may or may not have come from. That was a fun one. I don't think we really lost anything until we get to the Wagoneer. I think we covered everybody's
Yeah.
everybody's grounds, and I do mean the new Wagoneer, which I also love. But takeaway is appreciate the diversification so that those who want a frame on vehicle can still have it. And so therefore, There is kind of room for everybody at the Jeep table, as far as I'm concerned. This was a good one. We've got Jeeps to attend to, and other things that are just the daily rigmarole of SFJ 4x4. If you want, if you have some comments, feedback, or otherwise, you can email Jeffrey directly, JEFFC at SFJ4x4.com. And, or you could hit us up text only number 440-855-2100. And if you want to hear about our personal escapades from the weekend, stay in there after the sign off. Until then, Jeep on.
Jeep on.
Jeep on.
See, that was where Neil could have been singing the songs. We know when to come back, and he didn't. He just sat there in silence.
Yeah, I know he could have. Could have absolutely sang us a song, but it would have been. Nobody would have heard it. So
Oh, we were muted. It would have just been for your guys' entertainment at that point.
yeah.
Oh, good.
Well, I
I could
heard
sing
you
for
guys
you.
have great updates, so I'm gonna make mine real quick.
Owen's Harris is
I was
great.
going to say it was just.
Updates.
Just escapades together. So anyway, we I did a bunch of milling because it's my new toy. So I'm
100%.
obviously 6 weeks of that. So we were able to make the sprocket for Aiden's go-kart. The center hole needed opened up.
I bet he loved that. You guys have been working on that project for a while now.
He wants it to be done already. I'm
well-
trying to teach him patience.
Oh my God, to say the least, out of an
How many
11-year-old.
years?
He's going on as long as I've been building the house. Let's
It's
just be
pretty
honest.
pretty long.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're making some headway finally, and so we were able to open it up. Then we
At
found
this
out
point, he's going to have enough tooling. He could just build the entire go-kart from
Right?
scratch.
maybe. And then we found out the bolt pattern was wrong, so we went ahead and did that. And I showed him why it sucks on the drill press, and then do the rest of the holes in the milling machine. And boy, what a big difference that is when you can move the table around and stuff. Anyway, we got that all done, and then we finally were able to mock up the axle, put the motor on, realize it needed to be spaced up about a 2x4's width. Luckily, I'm a proponent of scrap metal, so I found some square tubing not that long ago on another escapade, cut that up, and it was real funny. We were using my 1950s power hacksaw to cut the tubing.
Oh my gosh.
And Aiden's like, it takes so long. I said, well, you could cut it by hand. Nope, I'll let it.
It's perfectly fine.
Let it just soar all the way over there. Bandsaw totally faster,
Yeah.
but
Power hacksaw.
it is what it is.
Shoot, shoot, shoot,
Yep.
shoot, shoot.
And the whole thing's
The whole thing's moving.
Yep.
Can we just, I'm on Team Aiden at the moment.
yeah.
Because this go-kart has turned into like a Jeep project of mine. Because you bought a go-kart that I feel like just a couple months prior to your acquisition of it was out driving around.
They launched the motor,
I see.
and the motor is actually a moped-esque motor put onto a go-kart, but they changed some stuff.
So you couldn't just find that motor; you had to re-engineer.
It was going to be like $1,200 or something for that motor.
we could have put I don't know,
So we
$20
waited
away.
1,200 years
We
instead.
was gonna say we could have put $20 away a month and bought it by now. It just whoop, on
So
play.
I thought I would do the cheaper route.
Oh, we always do.
And I went to Harbor Freight and bought a Predator series motor, and then realized I had to completely re-engineer that. And at this point, my 11-year-old's going, well, you change one thing, you change 5. And I'm like, yep.
Yeah, there's your life lesson. There's your life lesson.
So
Won't make that mistake again.
no, he won't. He will save his money and buy something that works.
Buy it. It
Yep.
works.
But he's learning how to weld on it. He's learning some machining on
I
it.
love it. That's
teaching
awesome.
him some patience. We're teaching him how you take
You're
it
getting to
apart,
spend
put it
that time
together,
together.
1,000 times.
Yep.
So, it's all good. And then late last night, I decided I need to actually work on the 36 because weather is warming up. And I just drove it not a couple weeks or a week ago with that warm day we had. And I had no side window in it again because it's all tore apart. And I didn't care, and I'm driving it anyway. And that's when I learned that Scott's bionic eye, it's not like Greg's bionic eye. I can just kind of see a shape and be like, yep, that's the same. Well, 34 Ford regulator and a 36 Ford rear regulator, shape-wise, is exactly the same. I am correct. Where they're not the same is where the little posts that go into the window track on the 34 Ford is like a half an inch. On the 36 Ford, they're 3/4 of an inch. And you know it doesn't fit?
Yep.
When you got it all greased up and you got the window in the car and you're trying to put that track in there and you got just enough room and you're like, why won't this go together?
Oh.
Did I bend the track when I put it
Right.
on? So I've taken it all back apart. No. So you know what I did last night?
What'd you do?
I took another regulator that I had in the car that was actually for a truck. It was my first Whoops buy, and ground the posts off of it because they were long, like it should have been. Welded those into the original regulator. So now, if anyone needs some 34 Ford coupe front window regulators that I got $200 in,
Oh God.
you just let me know.
Is that not just like how it works?
I went in the house. I was like, the 36 was just not here for it today. It just kept kicking me in the tender parts.
Yeah, that's just how it works.
It's funny.
So that was my update. Oh, and my
Way to
windshield's
pivot.
wrong.
Way to pivot. Way to adopt and overcome. Oh, and your windshield
Yeah.
wrong?
Yeah,
And
it's
36 was just not happy.
it's
this
not.
weekend.
I've ignored it all winter and done all kinds of other projects, and it was like, okay,
I see
you're
you.
back now.
Yeah.
You got some explaining to do. It's back.
I'm gonna make you pay for not being around.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Windshield is the wrong shape. I'm pretty sure it's a truck windshield. So
Okay.
the windshield drama continues.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry to hear that. Well, I did some hoeing over the weekend.
Yeah, you did.
Um,
And for all that grunt and labor you did, and the cold weather and the rain and the
and my whole
wind and-
collapsed in on me.
Yep. I got to this property Sunday and I'm looking, I'm like, that's a good looking hole. Too bad it's backfilled in. And then he pulls in right behind me and I'm like, do you know that? Nope.
Nope. Didn't know. Didn't
know
know.
what you didn't
Didn't
know.
know. It was, you know, the funny thing is I did a test trench, 4 foot long, 4 foot deep. And I let it sit for like 3 days, last week or so. And we had a little bit about mild weather, and I was like, okay, we're
So-
pretty solid. We're going to be good.
You know,
I'm going to point out that is the capacity that he is allowed to dig in his yard, apparently. Because once he started digging past that,
well, that's why the road crews have those little plates with the.
I
with the
literally
pipes.
said that to him.
That's what he told me. That's what he said. I said, I got money for that.
I was like, plywood and some 2x4s will make it too, but
No, ain't nobody got time for that or money for the plywood and 2x4s.
Yeah. I was
So
like,
I
just
don't-
draw sections and move it as you go.
I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know,
I think
other
you're gonna
than
bury a little bit, or you're gonna make a
That's-
hole, put some in, bury it,
That's-
and
It's like he was there this weekend.
right. Sky's the best ideas. So
I mean, I'm
honestly,
just glad I'm learning from him because when I somehow
this
get a
is what I say on every social media piece, folks. I am here to make the worst choices. I just smacked my microphone to
so
make the
passionate.
worst choices possible. I am impervious to my own dumb decisions, and I will just kind of keep going. This is why I like Jeffrey the cockroach, because he too will keep going. You can't kill him. You can't slow Jeffrey down. We are going to make a lot of dumb mistakes.
Yep.
Hopefully, you take note of that.
You're gonna be such a bad.
I've got
Cobra
such a good
operator, though.
mistake to talk about in a minute, but I want to first mention that my saw station is finally assembled. I got the miter saw and the pivot. I showed you guys the video of it. It
Yep.
turned out really good. I will get these up on Patreon eventually, I promise.
Yep.
But it actually is a functioning saw station now, so I'm pretty proud
Yep.
about that one.
Congratulations. Pretty cool station that you built in your garage.
Yeah. And then obviously Sunday I was over at your property.
Yes.
The weather was really fair and we decided to
Way
work-
better than Saturday where I chilled myself to the
Yeah.
bone.
So we
Yeah.
decided to work outside on your shed and get that roof up finally.
Yes. That we started before Thanksgiving.
Yeah. So we got all the
Snowmageddon.
we got all the rafters in, take most of the afternoon, make sure they're all secure, square, measured out appropriately. We even went back and did a couple things, double checks.
There was a lot of climbing and twisting between rafter beams. It was actually pretty fun. I said I wanted to do a roof. I've always wanted to do a big roof from scratch.
Yep.
And this was an opportunity to do that, and I enjoyed it.
So as we get done with that, we put in some 2x4s for a loft area for storage. I then promptly throw a 2x6 across that to stand on as scaffolding while we start moving the panels onto the roof. I get up there. It's, I'm like, good thing I trust these.
Hold on just a second. We spent, so I think I put in 8 or 9 hours, solid hours. I think we got started about 11 yesterday.
Yeah.
I didn't leave until 8. You left at 6:30. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we put in time, and it was diligent. There was not sitting around drinking sweet tea, right? So, and we did a lot of good work to square up these rafters.
Yeah, we're feeling really good.
Feel really good.
I'm up on the.
We were digging in the, really.
I'm on our makeshift scaffolding, and I'm literally looking at the OSB as it's coming up to put on there, and I'm grabbing a hold of it. I'm like, man, it's a good thing I trust these roofers that put this on, and promptly lean against one of the ties,
One of the rafters,
and it just moves.
just off to the left.
No nails.
None bit. We hadn't even loosely nailed that one.
Yeah.
Jeff was in charge of that one.
It's better to find out now.
I just stared at him like, maybe I got to rethink trusting these roofers.
Yep. Not even. It was attached. It was attached to the top plate where the bird's mouth ties into the wall structure.
Yeah.
But it was not tied into
wasn't.
the common board whatsoever.
Nope. Just right over out of the way.
See, that's why you need 8-inch studs.
That is why you need 8-inch king studs in my situation.
Joe in the comments goes, Neil has a she shed. Yes, he does.
I do factually have a she
We
shed.
built it.
It's big enough. I'd be putting a car in it.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's 100% for my wife. It is her she shed. But
she was
yes.
very excited to see it when she drove on the property.
Yes.
Brought us dinner.
Isn't her enthusiasm infectious? You know what I mean? Like she's like, oh, you gave me a brown paper bag. Yay! I'm like, wow, okay. That
Making
sounds
her
great.
dreams come true.
100%.
Yep.
100%. So we had a great day yesterday, and we covered a lot of ground and kind of put a notch in the belt or checked one off. I really enjoyed that time and the progress we got. Jeff, being a great family man that he is, he set a deadline for 6:30. He time blocked himself. We got right there. He was like, I got to tap out. Okay, cool. We threw like one more piece in place, and I was like, man,
It was 2, and we got them up so fast it felt like we only done a half a sheet.
we were feeling pretty bold at that point.
It just went right up. I was like, could I stay longer?
Yeah,
And
he
I was
really
like-
thought about it. I said, I'm going to respect Kristen's time as well, and we'll get you out of here, And then I was like, but I really wanted to just be done with this portion, close this side in. Because we had done on the backside where people can't see. That's where we screwed up first. So we learned some lessons for the front. And then he was like, he rattled off, 11 ways that I could put the OSB up there by myself. And how I should do it, which I listened to none of those. It all just kind of like came in, and I was like, oh, yeah. Oh, that makes perfect sense. And I was like, I have no idea what he's talking about.
I gave him ways that he could secure it so that he could just throw the board on there and the board can't slide off.
All of those things happened. Eventually, I just found myself up there precariously balanced, muscling this OSB around as it wanted to slide down the 612 pitch, which is not the most extreme.
That's why you put the bucket of the tractor over there so you catches it when it falls off. And you just get Leo in the driver's seat.
You have this really good tractor.
I have a really nice tractor.
I didn't own mine for 24
Neither of
hours.
us thought of that.
No,
idea.
never once. I'm going to muscle this without question.
I didn't own mine for 24 hours before Amy was picking me up in the bucket precariously in the yard.
That's
Wow, I could have done so much different.
They even make baskets for that.
Why were we even using ladders at that point?
Oh my God.
Right?
We have a man basket here. I've got forks for the tractor.
Right?
Wow. Again, I'll make the dumb mistakes, folks. You make the good
Yeah,
choices.
that's how you should clean your gutters
geez.
from now on.
Oh
BT
my
dubs.
gosh. All right. Anyways, Jeffrey, was there anything else you had?
No.
Oh my gosh. It was a great time. This past weekend. Thank you, Jeffrey, for your assistance. And we'll be back next week with more Jeep On.
Jeep on.
Jeep on.